CBSE Board, History, Chapter 8, Part 5, Audio by Renee Matthew. So revolutionaries and reformers were trying their best to bring in lot of changes in the society. And as people tried to change many things in the society, clothing also went through lot of reformation. But still, the style was stubborn. Women were protesting, and women really wanted to bring in some solid change so that they can be comfortable. So we saw that there were a lot of changes, especially in the democratic situation of the country, where people really fought for the democratic rights. So what happened? The National Women's Suffrage Association in the 1870s, under the leadership of Mrs. Stanton, they came to the front and they dominated, where they really campaigned for dress reform. The American Women's Suffrage Association, along with National Women's Suffrage Association, and two leaders were there, Mrs. Stanton and Lucy Stone. So these two names are very important. They came to the forefront to really fight for women so that the country will grant them the right to vote, so that they can also have a chance to represent themselves. So when you have the right to vote, you have representatives from the women who comes into the democratic part of the country and voice their opinion and talk for the women also. That is the main purpose. The argument was simplify dress, shorten skirts, and abandon corsets. So we saw the limitations and also the great physical and mental constraint which the corset and the stay, these women wore corset and the stay under these big huge gowns. So lot of mental and physical strain was there when they wore these kind of attire, and even doctors certified saying that it is not at all healthy to wear these kind of attire. On both sides of the Atlantic, there was now a movement for rational dress reform. So when so many people came to the front, when there was a lot of protest, what happened was that even women came to the front. Like, it's not just 2 or 3 people who came to the front, and they were lacking people who would really come and fight, voicing the opinion. And we have these two strong personalities, Mrs. Stanton and Lucy Stone. It is very good if you can write the names on a paper as you listen to this audio, because these names will get registered in your mind and it will help you to visualize also. So listen to these episodes like a story. So there was a big problem. People were fighting for changes in clothing, and then it affected. There was Victorian era, and we also discussed the changes and the ideal womanhood which people expected the women especially to follow. And after that, people fought for democratic rights, especially women again. And here you have the National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association coming to the front with two great personalities. So keep these points in mind. So there's another interesting fact which is given here. The movement for rational dress reform. So what happened? Now there was another woman whose name was Amelia Bloomer. She was an American. She was the first dress reformer to launch loose tunics worn over ankle-length trousers. Even we wear tunics now also over jeans or midis or whatever it is. So as it is given in this picture, it is something like a short kurta and it is loose. So Amelia Bloomer, she launched a particular attire which looked something like a kurta or a shirt, combination of both kurta, shirt and frock, all these three. And it was quite loose and it looked comfortable also. And it also had the shape of a dress. If you look at the picture, can you see it has got a frock kind of style also as you look into the bottom. It's a black color top. There is a belt in between. So the trousers were known as bloomers, rationals, or knickerbockers. So it is loose. The trousers were also loose. It is not so tight fitting like how the men wore. The Rational Dress Society was started in England in 1881 but did not achieve significant results. It was a failure. They were not able to launch it completely. Though Emilia Bloomer introduced it, it did not reach its target. It was the first world war that brought about radical changes in women's clothing. So, Rational Dress Society tried its best. So, there can be questions like which was the first movement which started or which at least tried to bring in change in dress. So, of course, it is the Rational Dress Society. And a radical change was brought about. A prominent change was brought about after the world wars, not before that. Before that, we cannot say that nobody tried to bring in. So, as history students, you should always understand that reformation does not take place within a day. It is a continued process where people keep on working towards it for days, years, and even centuries. And when you start, like I have seen people who just start the reformation, who wants to bring in a change, and then you get tired of it. Because when you bring in a change, it is something very new, and it is not necessary that people will accept you in the beginning. So these reformers also face the same situation where they were not accepted in the beginning. So they had to work and toil for a longer number of days and years and sometimes decades also to bring in some reformation. So the Rational Dress Society just attempted, and it was a failure, of course, but it is not that it is not recorded in history. See, now we are studying about it. After that, the major radical change was brought in after the World War. So we have got Reformation here. The slide itself says it is Reformation. As I told you just now, the reformers did not immediately succeed in changing social values. Success was not guaranteed in the first stage itself. They had to face ridicule and hostility. But by facing ridicule and hostility, did they really stop with that? No. It motivated them. It urged them because they really wanted a change. They couldn't stop. And many people were dying or even kind of feeling very uncomfortable because of these kind of laws which restricted their movement. So there were some good people or reformers who really wanted to change the situation. Conservatives everywhere opposed change. Conservative is a group of people who did not easily or readily accept change. It was very difficult to convince them, and they always opposed to any change. So it's like a villain in a story who always comes and puts a bar or hindrance to good things happening. They lamented that women who gave up traditional norms. So, what was their problem? They said, if a woman gave up a traditional dress, what will happen? They will no longer look beautiful. They will lose their femininity and grace. The ideals of womanhood will not work here because the traditional attire is no more there for the women. They are not graceful, they are not submissive, they do not even look docile. They always faced persistent attacks, continuous attacks. Many women reformers changed back into traditional clothes to conform to convention. So what happened? When so many people are pressurizing the women, naturally they had to go back to the traditional dress from all the loose tunics and all these things, and they started dressing in the traditional wear. Once again, back to square one, like how we tell in English. So again, you went back to the old style where you started wearing the women started wearing traditional clothes because of lot of attacks. They were just forcing them to go back to the normal style of dressing because they no longer looked graceful and beautiful. So, can you say that there was no success here? It is like you take two steps to the front and then you have to take 3 steps to the back. Then again, you take 4 steps to the front, then you take 1 step to the back. So, it is like a continued to and fro motion. You cannot guarantee that these changes will be readily accepted. And the main bar were the conservatives. Okay? All right. By the end of the 19th century, however, change was clearly in the air. So by 19th century, people were kind of, okay, we will go for a change. Ideals of beauty and styles of clothing were both transformed. Everything just changed suddenly. Even the ideals of beauty. So when you have a notion of beauty in your head, like how the conservatives had, because We can't blame them also. Over so many years, people thought that being graceful and beautiful is having that corset, looking very slim, having the thin waist, and all these things. And that kind of dress, it's not just the weight, but ideal. What is the meaning of ideal? The notion or the kind of parameters that you have to make yourself look ideally beautiful. Not just beautiful, but exceptionally beautiful. Everything just changed under what? Under a variety of pressure. So just now I told you, because of pressure, you had to go back. You tried for a change and then you had to take a step back, maybe 2 steps back. Now again, because of pressure, you had to take again 3 steps forward. Suddenly things changed. People began accepting the ideas of reformers they had earlier ridiculed. So slowly, even the conservatives started agreeing and telling, okay, we will go for the change. They started ridiculing people who really wanted a change. They started persistently attacking. That is a word that we saw. They attacked continuously. Now they were ready for a change and they said, we will go forward with the change. So this particular line is very interesting. With new times came new values. So look at the picture beneath, how things changed. We had the long, flowy, sumptuous dresses with detailed headgear, which had laces, flowers, all these things. It was too heavy also. The materials were not lightweight. Now we get clothes which are very expensive, like it is too lightweight. Most of the attire that you wear these days are lightweight. Nobody will wear heavy things except for occasional traditional wear, right? So it is like lightweight. Things have become simpler. It is not so gaudy and flamboyant. So with new times came new values, and finally change was seen very clear in the air. So there was some change which was brought about because of the work of these reformers.